8 o'clock.
If my pen works.
Good morning. We're going to start with the IDA, are we?
We'll do CDC first, if that's
CDC?
okay?
Sure.
Sure, change the rules here.
Sorry.
Here we go.
CDC.
All right.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So, we're gonna do the Glens Falls Civic Development Corporation, board meeting first, and then, and we really have just one or two items there, and then the Glens Falls Industrial Development Agency, and then we're gonna do the Glens Falls LDC. And before we start, this is our last, meeting of 2022, and I think it's been a year with, a great deal of opportunities, for us and for the work that we've done and for the city, and a lot of the projects that we closed, some important deals, projects that have moved forward, things that I think are gonna do some great things and bring about some positive change for Glens Falls. So I think it's been a pretty good year. I know we have some challenges ahead. There's been a lot in the paper recently about losing the cement factory here and things like that, so I know we've got challenges ahead, but this has been a great team, and I just want to thank all of you, our board members, for all you've done in 2022, and all of our key staff, both the ones that are here and some back at City Hall, Jeff, Patrick, Mark, Suzanne, people that are not here that do a lot behind the scenes for us, Amy Collins, Bernie Gray, and Megan Nolan, and I'm probably missing some, but I think that's it. So on behalf of the mayor and I just want to thank all of you guys, the members, and for all the staff for a great year.
Coming?
And no.
I do want to, Judy, I just want to add to that Jim Thatcher, our consultant.
Jim Thatcher, our
Who has
consultant,
been invaluable this year in bringing Jeff and I up to speed.
and he is here, isn't he?
Yes, he's blocked.
He's hiding behind
Blocked.
the-
Right.
He's one of those present.
He has his head down so you can't see him.
So I don't know if you can see this, but we got there's a new, a relatively new photographer that's moved to town, and he took some great pictures of the holiday event, and so this one was posted.
Oh,
that's a great one.
And we wanted to get it up here on the
You wanna
screen,
pass
but
it back?
it's the first version was too small and the second version was too big. But this is our
right.
mayor being very festive.
It looks great.
That's
great. I love
that,
Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me and Rudolph in the parade. That's it. He did find me with Santa for the very short period of time there.
Hey, you
I
had a
spent the
smile
time
on
with
your
Rudolph
face.
there. Yes, I
That's
did.
right.
Handing out candy canes to the children.
Oh, that was
nice.
One of
Thanks.
City Hall seats.
Yes, and thanks to this photographer, Bob Jeter, for getting this to us, so, very nice. So thank you, Mayor, for making the
Thank
city
you.
more festive and looking great.
Merry
So,
Christmas and happy holidays to all of you. It has been a great year and my first year in this seat, so thank you again. It's been a great year.
so for Civic Development Corporation, I'm gonna ask you to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 10th, and then our updated financial report. The main reason for us to meet today is because we have concluded that the city is, through the Civic Development Corporation, required to do an annual audit, even though we have had no activity throughout the entire year. And just as a reminder to everyone, I know you know it, but for the general public, the Civic Development Corporation was formed to be able to do bond transactions for nonprofit entities, including the Glens Falls Hospital and the Crandall Library. Those are the two that we have assisted with bond transactions. And we still have one bond transaction open, if you will, with the library. And so because of that, even though there's no financial transaction between us and the library, they pay their bond. Because that is out there, the Civic Development Corporation needs to continue to meet as needed and must do an audit. And so we don't have income coming in, and so the mayor is working with the council and to cover the cost. And so I'm going to ask you to approve today this audit contingent upon those funds coming into the account.
Approve hiring the audit company. We don't have the
Yes.
audit done. We're not
Correct.
approving the audit.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Approve it, the audit contingent, and the common council will pull the money out of the general fund and give it to the CDC. Thank you, CDC.
And so the audit would start sometime in February. So we're approving that agreement today. The audit would start sometime in about February and conclude sometime in late March. And then we would meet with the auditors at that time and go over that document. Okay, so I just wanted to state that before we start. And so I've called the meeting to order. We have a quorum. All members are here. Thank you. Our staff and key advisors are all here. And then that was my report, I guess. The minutes are attached from the March 10th meeting, which was our annual meeting. This year, again, it was the only time we really needed to meet this year. Is there a motion to approve
I will.
those minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions, any nays? There being none, the minutes are approved. And then also attached is the financial report for the 11 months of the year ending November 30th, 2022. Again, we've had no activity. And so is there a motion to approve the financial report?
I'll make it.
A second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays, so they're approved. And so then, the last item, unless the members wanna raise something here, is the resolution, to have the accounting firm conduct the annual audit. And this is the same firm that we've selected, the city of Glens Falls has selected, and it is the same firm we've selected for our other audits for the IDA and the LDC. It's the Bonadeo and Company LLP. They have offices in Albany. I think their main office is in Rochester. And we have a fee proposal for $7,500 from them. Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays, it is approved. Is there any other business that anyone wants to raise concerning the CDC?
On the Schedule A, for that one check paying back IDA for that Bluetooth, $3,265.
Yeah,
Is the money in the account?
no, there's a resolution on the council agenda for Tuesday to have that transferred so that they can balance out for the end of the year. So there's a resolution on the council agenda for Tuesday to have,
So we can't approve of paying something where the monies aren't in the account, so we'll have to do that in January. You wanna do it?
okay,
Why don't we do it contingent, and that way it can get paid, right?
in order to balance the books for the end of the year, the IDA is owed $3,265 from the CDC. There's a council resolution, which is the same thing was done last year to have the city balance that account.
Right,
There's a resolution on the agenda for Tuesday,
Okay,
but obviously until that.
right, Mark, is it important that we get that cleared before December
Actually,
31st?
I thought we wanted to clear the books of the due to, due froms.
Right,
So
that's,
Paris report.
right.
okay,
So, yeah,
So we can
Could this be
approve
done
it
contingent
contingent
on-
on the council approving.
so then I put forward that motion to pay that bill contingent upon the council's approval on Tuesday at their meeting, next Tuesday.
Okay.
Is there a
So moved.
motion, so moved, is there a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
32.
What's the amount?
3265, right?
$3,265.
3,265. And there's no abstentions and no nays, so that is approved. Okay. Any other business to come before the Civic Development Corporation? There being none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. We'll meet January 12th if needed, and we may, in order to make those approvals related to the contract with Bonadeo, but we'll wait and see. Okay. So the next meeting is the Glens Falls Industrial Development Agency, and I call that meeting to order. We have a full quorum, all members are present, and our staff are here. I'm not gonna do any kind of chair report until we get to the project reports, which I think Jeff will probably mostly do. I'll help a little bit here. We've got the minutes from the November 10th meeting, held, last month. Any questions or comments on those? If not, is there a motion to approve the
So moved.
minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved, no abstentions, no nays.
I'll need to abstain, I wasn't here.
Oh, you weren't here? Oh, that's right, okay. Financial report, 11 months ending November 30, 2022. Mark, you wanna,
This one, you only had the one small bill from, Castell, what was that?
small. Do you, I've got 3 bills.
That's more Schedule A. I'm just talking about what happened then.
Gotcha.
His financial report
Oh,
of what
gotcha.
happened, right.
Gotcha, okay.
Not future.
And so the other item where is a bill also, so that you'll do that in a minute under schedule, okay,
Yeah.
very good. So nothing to do with the report itself. So then the report itself is complete as it was presented. Any questions for Mark on that? There being none, is there a motion to approve the financial report as presented?
First, go ahead.
First,
First, second, third, I'll take it all.
Right. Lois is in. Lois is all in.
I'm not gonna tell you, let's get going here.
All right.
Money to spend.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mary, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The report is approved, there's no abstentions and no A's. So then, on Schedule A, we need Mark to fill us in on this. We do have 3 bills pending for a total of $1,605, but there's another item that was not on here. So what is that, Mark?
Yeah, so I failed to put on, normally at the end of the year, we make a journal entry for, like, basically my time. The accountant's charges for the year. And we pick a percent, so this year we picked 40%, so the amount ends up to be $7,000. So rather than make an entry, I propose we just cut a check from IDA to LDC,
Right.
and that'll erase any due funds from the financial statements at the end of the year.
And what's the exact amount?
7,000.
7,000?
From IDA to LDC,
Yeah.
Yes.
and then at LDC, will we dispense it?
So,
Okay.
so and the IDA has, sufficient resources in our account to cover this, and again, just for the record, so the IDA is being, Mark Toomey and his firm have been doing, the monthly reports and working with the auditors, throughout the year, and all of that cost has been covered, by the LDC, so that we only paid 1 bill throughout the year, and we've done this in the past. And so the cost of that to the IDA, throughout 2022 would have been $7,000. And so, we're being asked now to write a check, from the IDA to reimburse the LDC for that expense. And it's, consistent with what those bills have been throughout the year, and it's 40% of that. Okay, and so it's not on our schedule of bills, but I'm adding it unless there's an objection by the members. Okay, and so, the total, payment of bills, for this month would be, $8,000, 605.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the payment of those bills?
I make it.
Second,
Second.
Mary, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays, any abstentions? There being none, bills are paid. So I'm gonna turn this over now to Jeff. You've got some folks that have
Yeah,
come
there's,
into
Steve
the
Batson
office.
should be here, he said he'd be a little bit late because he had to drop his kids off at school or something like that. So I told him he could get here by 8:20 or so, he should be okay, so we'll buy a little bit of time. He wasn't really gonna do a presentation anyway, just be here to answer some questions, so why don't we just skip over that for 1 second and move over to the next item down below it. I think we'll probably need to approve the budget, right? Is that correct? I mean, I know you all have the budget, but I don't think we approved it.
I don't think we did either.
Anybody have any questions about
Any
it?
discussions?
Yeah, the one thing I just wanted to mention, as I think I mentioned last meeting, we sort of cleared up some of these things or simplified some of these things. It looks like when Ed had moved over to the EDC, he had taken some budget lines over with him since it wasn't really in City Hall anymore. So things like events and fees and marketing and advertising, things that really I didn't see any function that the IDA would have per se. And we sort of summarized those. So if you look at the budget that we proposed, which you may still have, I don't think it's in the new packet, but you should have it. The one thing that we do have in there is there's a small stipend we did leave for compensation for staff. That's been there for a while. It was reduced from, originally I think Ed had it at 9,000, we reduced that to 6,000. By way of the LDC, I think that was at 7,500 and we reduced that to 6,000 as well. That hasn't been used at all for the last couple of years. Obviously, there was an interim CEO for the last, well, until the beginning of this year, so Ed passed in mid-2020. The reason I mention that is because the one thing we're gonna have to figure out is how that would be distributed. Historically, of course, the EDC would simply bill the IDA and the LDC, and then he would run through his own payroll. That can't be done anymore, obviously. I see three potential options. One is somehow to run it through City Hall. I don't know if that's expedient. I don't know if that's administratively possible. And I don't know if it's the arm's length relationship would militate against that anyway. You might have something to say about that, Kara. Second way would be, can you do just a 1099 contractor? That would be a simple way. In the case of the IDA, I have a sub-S corporation. I could sort of do it, but I don't know if Patrick for the LDC, that would work for him. The third way would be, and this is something we might want to think about, and I've talked to Mark a little bit about this, is to get a payroll service. One of the things that might work for is that, as you know, we've been talking for the last year or so about trying to sort of extract, or separate Mark from the account temps. The fees of which are pretty high, considering that he only does work for these two agencies. If we were to do that, we might find some savings in not using account temps and using some small payroll service. So I don't know if we can talk about that. It's pretty simple. These are pretty simple transactions, so we're not talking about something terribly complicated. The problem you have is, we run into a similar situation with the auditors. Like, it doesn't matter how simple it is, you're going to be, the fees are through the nose. So we can look into that and see how that works.
Just for the record, I think the LDC pay was 9,500, we brought it down to 6,000, and I
Okay.
do not have an S corp, I'm not that financially organized. I don't have a company.
Well, I think if there's a 1099, it wouldn't matter anyway who it's
Right.
going to. It's just a question of whether that's a legal mechanism.
But now, I appreciate the conversation. That conversation's really not about the budget, right? The approval of the budget,
Sure.
The only report you really have is that you've taken out some lines.
Correct.
That were not truly,
And haven't been
IDA,
used, right.
budget. You've reduced the personnel budgets.
Correct.
From 6,000 respectively to 9.
Two, six.
Two, 6 from 9.
Right.
So that's the budget that you as a group want to, and then separately,
Correct.
as we move forward into next year, we'd like to figure out how to best
Make
take
that
those $6,000 and get them to the chair, to the staff, the CEO of the IDA and the LDC, the ones who are helping us with those organizations. And then separately, we should look at how we're paying our CFO, because we are paying him. It's just that we're paying quite a bit to the temp company that we use to hire.
So just a little bit of background on that. Those funds were put into place at the time that Ed Bartholomew left City Hall payroll. So when he was on the City Hall payroll, his status with the city as the head of the economic development included running these organizations, and it was included.
And it was a salaried position.
It was a salaried position, it was included. when there was an agreement that he leave and go to the EDC, but continue to take on this role, he went off of city payroll, was no longer a city employee. And that's why those funds were put in there, to cover that. And so it was always the intent that whoever was in the position of running the EDC would also run these organizations. But I think it's a fair discussion to have, and to maybe go back in time and compare those salaries and see
Yeah.
if there needs to be some additional compensation. And so maybe and then also the idea of getting off of account temps is, I think, is a great one. If we could figure out how to do that without Mark being prohibited from working for us, would be, as I think, and so that needs to be looked at as well. And maybe we could reach an agreement with account temps.
Absolutely.
So maybe what we could do is, form a committee to, work with you, Mayor, and see if we could,
Sure. Definitely have those conversations, that's great. But again, I think you've got a budget in front of you with those numbers removed and some items, and it's up to you if you would like to pass that for this coming year.
okay. So let's do the budget first. Is any additional questions or comments on the budget as presented? Okay, there being none, is there a motion to accept the budget as presented?
Oh, maybe.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions and no ayes, so the budget is passed. Would any members here be willing to serve on a small subcommittee just to, or I guess interim committee, not interim.
Not interim.
What do you call
We're
it?
not interim.
What do
We
we-
exist. We exist.
You
You just want a committee, a budget review committee.
Budget review committee to work with the mayor to see if, how those lines, how we should deal with the salary issues and do the account temp.
Don't you all jump up at once.
I know.
I'll serve.
Thank you.
I'll serve.
Okay.
Thank you
this-
very much.
So we got
Don't look at
Jane,
me.
Judy, and the mayor. Very
Math
good.
is not mine.
All right. We can do
Denise, you
that
got
by
time?
phone.
I do.
All right.
And
How about,
Denise,
can we
and
get
Denise is on too.
There you go.
All right.
Wait,
Thank
that might,
Yeah,
Then we're
we
gonna have to
can't
have
have
a-
quorum.
Oh, would that be a quorum?
Right.
Three
Yeah.
would be a
Right.
quorum?
I'll
There we
step
go.
away.
No, no, no,
we
no,
need the
please.
institutional memory
Hey,
here.
yeah, we.
step down, that's absolutely fine.
What, so you two, you don't need me.
You can be the
You don't
alternate,
need-
Denise.
They
Denise
kicked
and,
you out
Denise
already?
and Judy would
Look
be,
at
that would be
Denise,
great.
Denise, Judy, and the mayor.
Yep.
Got it.
All right.
Sorry.
They kicked you out already. You didn't
Do
even
that.
get started.
Thank you.
Tell me where I need to be in life.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Everybody's on the
I'll
committee?
try it.
There you
go.
Sorry, my amateur, right there, I'm an amateur. Good.
No longer committee then.
So, project reports, the 1525 Park Street is not yet quite open, but I think
Their grand opening is Friday.
is Friday.
They actually have a soft opening tonight, I believe, for construction people, staff, whatever. And then they're having an opening tomorrow. That's
Okay.
the first night. I have a
So the
reservation.
grocery store part of it opened, and several of us were there. And we had discussions about actually having our meeting there today. And because their opening of the restaurant hasn't happened yet, they were a little overwhelmed, and so we did not do it. But several of us would like to go back and see the whole place. And so we may do some type of meeting there or tour there in early January, okay? And so if you don't get to go there and eat at the restaurant once it opens, we'll probably go there for a meeting or something.
I'll
very
be
soon.
here, so I'll have
So-
to make a trip to eat.
Yeah, so we were gonna possibly meet there today.
And that'd be
so-
great,
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah. So, and the grocery store part of it is open. The quality of the construction is very well done, I have to say. It's, not just, the interior, but the exterior of the building is, and when you drive by even the back of it, it's really improved, I think, the appearance in Glens Falls, and it's very much improved the appearance on Park Street, so, well done, guys, and just every time you drive by it, remember that you helped to make it happen, so.
Is it a large deli section or grocery section?
It's not
Is it
large, but
more
it's,
specialty?
it's interesting.
Is it?
Yeah.
Specialty type?
Yeah, it
Good
reminds me of Putnam Market in Saratoga.
Ah.
Small version, but.
Yeah, small
I
version.
had friends who said
Yeah.
that same thing, that it reminded them of the market.
Putnam
Right.
Market, yeah. So, and, you know, other cities that I do work in have things like this in their downtown, and major grocery stores are not in downtowns anymore, and for people who live in downtown to have access to this is
Something,
great.
yeah.
I mean, they even had
Right.
some gluten-free items there, so it was,
Sure.
yeah, it was interesting. Okay, and then, so Market Square is, any update on that at all? or-
Yeah, we're actually in negotiations with them, you know, as I think I mentioned last month, you know, the problem they run into with interest rates is sort of working against them and trying to get the project done, you know, sort of frustrating that, you know, during the 6 years, whatever, that the DRI's been around, the interest rates have been wallowing at near zero, and all of a sudden, when we finally can get moving, the Federal Reserve's trying to stop us. That said, I think we have a path forward. You know, if they could get the numbers to work out, I think we can. They'd be working on Market Square right now, if they had the sort of the numbers working. So, Mayor and I have been working with them, with the Department of State, right, seeing if we can sort of assist them in any way, reallocating funds that we have available. They're working with Glens Falls National, their primary bank, obviously, to work on the project. So I'm confident there. Meanwhile, on the market,
We have
Okay.
we have some agreements that we've made, or resolutions we've passed, that called for a closing, I think, by the end of the year. and I don't
Correct.
think
They've
that's
not
gonna
asked
happen.
for-
The due diligence, they extended their due diligence period through the end of the year.
They did.
So the due diligence will run through December 31st, then they can either ask for an extension, or they can close out their due diligence, and then the closing is to take place within 30 days of their due diligence.
so they will either ask for an extension or we'll be looking to close, because they got one in October.
Right, they'll
Up
either
to the end of the
request,
year.
their options, I suppose, in their, you know, their next move could either be to ask for an extension of that due diligence period, or to say, we're good, we're gonna move forward and let's proceed to a closing.
So that, you'll remind them of that, right?
I will.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Larry knows about it. We've
Yeah.
talked about it.
I've talked to, Libby and I have gone back and forth too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
they know. All
Yeah,
right.
they've been acutely aware of that. I think they've been a little preoccupied because last week, right, they were preparing and they just submitted actually on Tuesday, which I think was the deadline for HCR.
At
the
midnight.
tax credit, yeah, and they got theirs in before then, but but by hours, not by days. One of the problems they ran into was we got there was a letter from SHPO, a last minute letter saying that they had issues with the building being too high. And the architects went back to them, this was on Friday. Now remember, that was a request I think we had submitted back in August. I think we had sort of alerted all these other state agencies about these things. So it was the timeliness issue was rather inconvenient. They responded very quickly with some comparative data showing buildings around the area, and 2 days later got a letter saying we're comfortable with your explanation.
Okay,
So they got that in a time, the okay from SHPO before they made their submission.
excellent.
I've never heard of anybody getting anything done from the state agency in 2 days, but
I know, right?
I need
SHPO's
to
pretty
find out the magic
efficient.
formula there.
Yeah.
So that application is in. You might know more about than I, Judy, about like what the timeline would be on that. I mean, is it early year? I mean.
Remember, you just got done saying you're
efficient.
You're efficient, yeah.
We heard that. You're on tape.
You're efficient.
All right.
Change your tune.
I don't think that they would know until maybe March.
I was gonna say spring.
Yeah, spring,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, typically, they get about 100 applications, and, about 25% get funded.
25%.
Yeah, there's only so much, what they mostly need is called federal tax credit, and there's only so much federal tax credit to go around. The state has a cap on how much they get from the IRS. And so, they probably have enough to fund about yeah, I'm talking generally speaking, about 25%. So you've got a 25% chance of
Chance.
getting funded. Because the project is within a DRI, it maybe goes up a little bit above that 25% chance, but, you know, maybe to 30.
Okay.
So it's the first time in, if,
Yeah, that too.
you know, yeah, if the agency's not completely comfortable with it, the fact that you got the SHPO issue resolved before it went in is a good thing. But, you know,
Do you know if, I mean, is there any indication, my understanding at least, is that historically they have had these submissions or these rounds twice a year, but since COVID, they had limited to once a year. Do you know if that's where
the
that?
opposite, they went to twice a year during
They went to
COVID.
twice a year during COVID?
Yep,
Because I thought they didn't do one this spring. Was that wrong?
they did 2 in 2022.
They did? Okay.
Yep, because I got my Utica one funded
Oh,
and
well, I
then.
guess
She knows.
Okay.
So, yep, they did 2 in 2022, and, they do have a staffing shortage, and so I would not be surprised if they didn't go back to
I
one
was
a year
gonna say, they have a
because-
staffing shortage, so they doubled the number of
I
offerings
know.
they have, that's.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the
and it
hope
is-
was to cut the number of applications down by, so that the
Oh.
deadlines weren't so
Right,
unmanageable,
right, right.
but that didn't happen, it just made everybody
Right.
think that there was more opportunity.
Yeah, the only reason my only concern about this is, you know, originally we had been looking at sort of the cadence of events would be, you know, phase 1, if you will, the existing buildings along with Market Center that we're building would be sort of done first. This would be sort of done after. I'm trying to think of the farmer's market and how they might have to move, you know, whether they're gonna have to go, let's say, next winter. I don't wanna discuss that at this point since we don't
So,
know.
yeah, so in addition to not knowing if they have a tax credit award for this project, even once they do, let's say that by the end of March they know, to close a tax credit deal, the closing calls usually include about 20 people, and I'm on them frequently, and it takes about 6 months to close a
Okay.
deal. So you wouldn't even be able to close and start construction until 6 months after
Right.
that award.
Right.
It's rather time consuming.
Right. Yeah, I'm just thinking, preferably you probably wouldn't have all that construction going on on 5 different buildings all at
You're,
one time.
right, you're not, and so you're gonna get through an entire 2023, market season without there being construction on that site, given that timeline,
Okay,
okay?
that's fine. Okay, yeah, just to dovetail on that, if anybody else have any questions about Market Square? Mainly because there is, just so the board is aware, there are some other inquiries we've had for some IDA support. Neither project is close enough to sort of go into any details about it. I will say one is down relative proximity to South Street where we're working on, so it's encouraging to see, you know, some developers looking. You can imagine if you're down there thinking where we're working and where others might be working, who might be asking, or at least what properties they might be asking about. And then another property we've been talking about, discussions with over in the First Ward, which is an area long in need of rehabilitation. I had thought that Elizabeth Miller might be coming to us about, you know, 126 Glen. At the planning board meeting Tuesday, she had indicated with respect to SHPO, because she's looking to get a handicapped or ADA ramp on the front of the building, that she was not looking for any public support. That's probably because she already has her tenant in the first floor who's been anxious to get started, so I'm guessing that she thinks she can sort of make that work. So my presumption then is that if she's not looking for any support, she's not looking for anything from the IDA as well.
Okay. Good.
So that's where we are there. So we're looking good going into 2023, I believe.
So, Steve Babson was gonna come today. We wanted to talk about, opportunities of taking funds that we have in the bank and possibly investing them into some short-term accounts, 3 to 6 month accounts, to try to earn greater interest in that. And he's not here yet, so what I'd like to do is keep the meeting open in case he does arrive, and then we can hear from him, about that.
Sure.
And so, unless there's other business, I have no other business to come before the board other than that item.
Well, and I think that's okay too, because we're gonna be talking
Yeah.
about, we're talking about
Both
money
agencies,
both
yeah.
from the IDA and from the LDC that we have that could potentially go into this investment.
Okay, Alright. And there are restrictions that as public authorities, we do have some restrictions on what we can invest in, and so they would have to be consistent with those, restrictions that we have, but you can invest money into short-term CDs, I believe, and things like that, so that was the conversation. Alright, so we'll, meet again in January, and we do have an awful lot going on, particularly at this time of the year as we do our audits and whatnot, so, thanks again to everybody here, and we'll just stay open for a few minutes and see if Steve is ever able to arrive. Mayor, I turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. So let's open the Greater Glens Falls Local Development Corporation. Good morning, we're all still here. Under administrative reports, I just want to say ditto to the hard work this year, the discussions, everything we seem to have accomplished this year. You got a document that's not completed, a document that shows what the agency's been working on in 2022. By our January meeting, we'll finalize that, but that's in your packet. I wanted to just draw attention to it. It's many of these activities, and it's a great thing to see. The Arts District grant is, the projects are completed. The grant itself is nearly completed. We're waiting for the state reimbursements to pay for the final payments of the artists who did the mural work along the Wood Theater wall. The Arts District's also adding a QR code that allow people to go to the website and learn much more about the panels, which is fantastic. We had many questions and comments on that. I think it's come along great. That's really all I have for a chair report. And again, thank you, and hopefully happy holidays and happy New Year coming up, right? So it goes November. Let's see. We didn't have any committee meetings, so we have no committee reports. In the minutes, you've been sent in the packet the meeting held on November 10th. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to
I'll make
accept the
it.
minutes? Great. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I need to abstain.
Abstain. There we go. Thank you. Financial report, the 11 months ended November 30th. Updates from Mark. Any comments, Mark?
Just the usual hits, this year, a couple bills for $763, insurance bill for $1,200, some payroll items for $905, and we had, tax payment to Queensbury for $5,800. That is it.
Any questions? Do we have a motion to accept the financial report?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? And payment of bills. You see the list here. Mark, any thoughts about the bills?
Just the sale payment, 3 weeks of the contract, typical monthly insurance payment that's, first insurance funding, and then 2 CP bills.
Any questions for Mark? If not, we have a motion to accept the bills, payment of bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Any abstentions or nays? There we go. And I don't believe we have any other report. That's the quickest thing we got there. About number 4, project reports and resolutions, the DRI. Jeff, you just gave an update. One thing I would add to, I'll let you speak more about it, but that just didn't come up in the last meeting. Jeff and I met with Larry Novak from Bonaccio, and everybody knows the interest rates have changed dramatically since we put this bill together. but I wanted you to know that, he was very complimentary of Glens Falls National at trying to find ways to make this work. And so we are gonna, try to find a way to close the gap. It's a significant gap between what the 3% interest or 3.5%. I think they actually were pretty good at saying they were planning on 4%, but nobody had expected it to go from 4 to 7.5%.
Mayor, do
Yes.
you know if they're looking at using historic tax credits? All those buildings are on.
They are.
Yeah.
They are, so
Yeah.
historic tax credit is incorporated into their, and that's not
That was done
sufficient,
that was done from the very beginning.
so it's really just down to interest rate.
It's really just down to interest rates, and, from talking to Larry, it's, when he's looking at the numbers, he says, all they really need to do to show you is to change 3.2, and they actually think they're like about 6.2 is what he said they're at right now. But he said, we were at 3.2 in March or whenever we had the agreement, they had estimated at 4, and he said, but if you plug in 6.25, you see how the number goes up, and we just can't make it work.
So anyway, the positive thing is that Glens Falls National Bank wants to work with them and wants this to happen. And we're gonna, we had been asked by Empire State Development, as we're looking at DRI money, they're most comfortable with us considering those two buildings, the incubator building and the Hot Shots building, and our market center, all as one project anyway. Because when we, I'm sorry, I don't want to go too far into the weeds or down a rabbit hole, but when we originally got the DRI grant, $2.5 million was for a parking structure, $2.5 million was for the market square, or market center, sorry, thank you. So we had been approached ESD and saying to them, look, we're not building a parking garage as part of this. Can we use that $2.5 million? Because the construction costs have gone through the roof. And so they said yes. But when we met with them afterwards, after they said yes, they said, yes, of course, you gotta write us a letter and tell us how you're gonna do this. Then they get, but that $5 million just for that center alone, we usually don't pay for things completely. So it would benefit us if, even though it's a separate deal that Panaccio is developing the incubator building and the Hot Shots building, if this was all part of one deal where they're putting in their private equity and stuff, and so we're working on that, and there is some room in that whole budget to maybe help pick up this shortfall between the budget of constructing the property, fixing up the interest rates and fixing up those two properties and putting them all together. So we're having those conversations.
Yes, go
Have
they
ahead.
given you a number of what the actual gap is?
Yes.
And what is that
I
number?
believe it's around $500,000.
Have they looked at doing a 4% tax credit deal, a bond transaction for the whole thing?
They have not mentioned that.
I mean, Mayor, if you want me at one of the meetings, this is what I do for a living, it's not what I do for us typically, but I could,
Well,
sure.
come to a
Well,
meeting if you need help
Alright.
and help give them maybe some direction, because this is going on all over the place, it's not unusual.
Sure.
I'd be happy to help you.
Well, I should say, just to dovetail what the mayor is saying, so in addition to the money he's talking about, you'll recall that there is in the DRI, like a grant, right, which is included in this, 1.2 million. The premise that we've made and that ESD has at least been receptive to was to combine those two grants. So essentially you've got the $5 million, the $1.2 million, you now have 6.2. The overall project cost might be somewhere in the vicinity of all 4 buildings, if you even include, they were talking about even including Sandy's in the construction cost, since it's part of a project, even though it's privately owned. Then you're talking about a project that might be somewhere in the vicinity of about $13 million, right? So if you added all those, suddenly 6.2 is not, it's only less than half of the public funding is only half of the cost of the budget. So these are just the negotiations we're going on. I'm having a meeting with the Department of State next week where we're gonna sort of make this proposal, and hopefully they'll say, yes, we need something official, and then, you know, it just gives us more flexibility along
Yeah.
those lines.
And they're
But sure,
not,
that's-
and
I
they're
think
not
that's a great
asking
idea.
us for anything. They were in that meeting when Empire State Development asked if we could look at it all as one,
Right.
because the 5 million, although they were fine with us using it on the market center, they were like, yeah, but it's all a loan, and it's just our funding. And so if it looks, I don't know if it looks better, their comfort level in moving forward with all the entire $10 million worth of funding looks better when it's part of that, all phase one is part of one project.
Yeah, it's-
So anyway, that conversation, I wanted you to know it was happening, but also the bigger thing here is I wanted you to know that the local bank was working hard and they acknowledged it, to keep the local bank and them doing that. I think that you certainly wouldn't want across from your flagship office, the prominent, billboard of another, maybe national bank, right? So anyway, wanted you to know that was happening, and I appreciate your offer. Certainly, but I would love to have you when you come into these
Well,
meetings.
And the bank could have still been involved as an investor, but it's probably an ideal bond transaction, quite honestly,
Yeah.
given rates right
Yeah.
now.
And actually,
And the complexity of the project with you're putting, those, historic tax credits into the transaction.
yeah, fantastic.
We should talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to have more knowledge at any table is good.
And he even mentioned that the bank has been sort of stepping outside of their comfort zone as far as, what they could do,
Yeah.
the kinds of investments they could make. in
Did
this
they
project.
mention who their investor is for the historic tax
They
credits?
have, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Or what the amount is that,
He didn't mention,
okay.
but we can certainly get that.
What you would wanna ask for is for their, underwriting model.
So, I think we could use your experience and help. I know Larry's, looking for it. They wanna move forward, right? And this is unprecedented, right? I mean, interest rates have changed in such a short period of time. So so anytime, we'll let you know. I'd love to have you in the room. Absolutely. So, I just wanted you to know that. Jeff, do you have anything else about the,
No.
about the DRI update that you hadn't given us? No, so we're set. And then, let's see, so the Small Business Recovery Fund, nothing new report, I don't believe. Pat, do we have a report about the Small Business
No,
Recovery Fund?
we've got one, already project that we approved last month. We've got a couple of other businesses that are looking at it. What's interesting is that 2 or 3 of the businesses that we approached, mentioned that they didn't need it, right, which is kind of interesting as a COVID response.
Yeah, sure.
Grant. In fact, two of them said that they did much better. One was a restaurant, one was a retail outlet. They did much better during COVID because they increased their online sales. So I guess what I would say is if you are in touch with or you have connections with a small business, less than $3 million, I think, right there, that's the revenue, that might be interested in it. We've got about $200,000 left to be able to grant between now and May. So I would, if you have suggestions, send them to me. There is a COVID restriction, and they have to have some kind of loss of income due to COVID, which is why the 2 businesses that I approached specifically couldn't use it. So, but we'd like to not have to return the money to them. We'd like to spend the money, not have the state reprogram.
Yes, it's encouraging in some ways that many businesses were resilient enough. What I found, and we have had several applications from people who've been sort of, coming to us for the last year and a half, really. A lot of them, interestingly, have been restaurants, and even though restaurants have not been doing terribly poorly, one of the things about this particular fund is that it's a forward-looking as opposed to backward-looking.
Yeah.
Right? How are you going to deal with the future? Now,
It's just
we don't really deal.
Changes, right, the changes that
yeah, we don't really deal particularly with staffing per se, like this grant is not designed to hire you more people necessarily. But one of the things it does do is to try and help businesses, particularly restaurants, especially when you have downtown these small restaurants that don't have space, right, is dealing with things like supply chain issues and logistics, and the fact that in many cases, you have to buy way more stuff than you previously did. So a lot of things like, you know, equipment, extra storage equipment, you know, bigger coolers, things like that. The pizza oven, you know, the way that Cooper's Cave, their business model changed when people said, we all wanna do takeout, and pizza's a popular takeout food. So it's just a, you know, it's a sort of a forward-looking thing, but as Patrick mentioned, you do have to demonstrate that there was a loss. In some cases, it's hard because your business could have been, Jim, when did the business had to start, like before the beginning of right before the pandemic, so in some
January
cases,
1st, 2020.
so in some cases, businesses didn't even have anything to compare to, right? So you sort of have to sort of construct some way of saying, you know, what was forsaken potential revenue? And that's where one of the challenges is in trying to sort of, you know, obviously you gotta document that.
I was at Cooper's Cave to eat, and they made me go into the kitchen to see the pizza oven.
I was just gonna ask how it's doing.
It's there.
Great.
And the prep table.
Well, right,
Very
they
good.
had Cooper's Cave.
But are they
said
making
that
it?
They would be up and running.
Not till January.
By the
There's
end
more,
of December
there's,
is what Aiden said.
yeah, there's more construction, I guess, they
Right.
to do.
Yes,
But I saw the oven is there.
that's good.
Yeah.
We got the bill, actually. We're set for reimbursements.
So under the GF Drive, transfer of grant approval disbursement, Pat?
Yeah, this is just for your information. Jim and Jeff and I had a meeting with Abby's Cookies, which was a GF Drive recipient of a $20,000, roughly $20,000 grant last year? 2 years ago?
Last year.
Last year, okay. So before I left, at City Hall. The current owner of Abby's, who has built it to the point where it is interested in moving on.
Seriously.
And she is selling the business to, I'm not sure if it was an ex-employee or a new employee or what.
She's leaving?
Wow.
She's gonna transfer the business, and then I think she said she was gonna do something, she was still gonna stay partly involved in the cookie business, but she was also gonna she was going on to some other project, I don't remember what it was, but it was food related. So the goal of this is obviously we have an agreement,
All the time,
we obviously have an agreement with them, with the two owners who are now transferring. We have an agreement, GF Drive agreement with these people that the new owner has agreed to be transferred to them with all the responsibilities and all the restrictions that it comes with. So at the end of the meeting, I handed that pot of soup to Kara to begin working with their lawyers.
I haven't heard anything from them
Okay.
yet. I got your email obviously, but I didn't.
Well, I'll send an email, I
Okay.
will send an email then to them to ask, you know, what their schedule really is. So,
Okay.
and again, this is not for approval, at least at this point. The goal of this is just to let you know that, and the other thing I forgot to mention is that the state, we had a conversation with the state who approved this transfer, making sure that it was, you know, that the new owner understood all the responsibilities and all the requirements.
Right, in theory,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna ask either one of you had anything to add.
yeah, in theory, if the new business owner keeps the storefront, keeps it as a bakery, keeps the equipment that was subsidized with public funding,
Ice cream.
and maybe even expands and has better business plans long-term than the one selling, then the spirit of GF Drive is intact. So we're looking at this as an assumption of the deferred loan agreement versus a recapture or a default, because the state doesn't want money back. We don't wanna give money back to the state, and the city doesn't necessarily need it back to hand out when we wanna get this GF Drive overall over next spring, because it's all timing out with the rest of the DRI, so there's pressure just to keep these things
Yeah, and
moving, and the new owner seems to be inclined to run it maybe even a better business.
Right, more hours,
And
yeah.
keep that storefront open. It won't be Abby's Cookie Jar, it'll be, there's a new business name proposed, but that was, I think, in the city's best interest for it to remain as a viable storefront in the downtown, not as a default that we wanted to demand repayment back.
Right, and we've also kept the conditions, of course, for the 5-year, 20% per year forgivable loan, which is now down to 3.5 years essentially. So they're transferring the assumption of that risk for the subsequent 3.5 years.
Is she closed now, or is she still?
No, she's still
She's
running.
open.
She's still.
Yeah, I went and got cookies actually at the tree light.
And I think it'll probably be seamless. I don't even think they will close. She is changing the name. Abby's was the owner's daughter's name, I think. And I can't remember, it was a pretty clever name at
It's
first.
Flower Child, FLOUR, Flower Child Bakery.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, it's pretty clever.
Okay.
And
I like
she
that.
seems, again, she seems very, she's,
What was the name? Flower.
they all look very young, but they seem, the new owner really seems like she's got some good ideas on, again, how to support and grow the business that is now, that has been supported and grown over the last.
Is she there running it now, the new person?
She's been working with her.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah. They apparently have a long-time relationship, so.
Well, it's nice when somebody takes over, so you're not losing something, it's
Yeah.
just continuing.
Yes.
That's nice.
Seems like that's it, and if their attorney reaches out to you, Carol, we'll see how it can proceed, right? So if they continue on, then it would just be, they're gonna pick up that responsibility.
Correct, yeah, it's just, it literally is a lateral transfer of the GF drive, and as Jeff said, it's 3.5 years of a 20% per year forgivable loan, so.
Very good.
And then the second item on there is the additional GF drive item that, I mistakenly didn't put on the agenda. I had some things going on earlier this week that kind of screwed up my schedule. So anyway, the upshot though is that, we're asking you to pass this resolution. I've given you, paper copies of it. But the resolution is just to authorize the disbursement of funds for Realized Brokers, who's a GF Drive project. That money, they gave us the receipts, we put the package together and sent it up to the state. The state has now sent us the reimbursement, so it's in the LDC accounts. And what we'd like to do is get that out to the business. So, and with your approval on the resolution, we can do that.
Just one question, you've got, it says up to 15,000, but then there's amount 12,966.40, which are we approving?
12,966.40. They were
They're
originally
short of
authorized
15,
for.
and so they're
50.
closing out at under 15.
Correct.
They're not gonna
Okay.
use the full amount
Oh, okay.
offered.
And it's for a drone and the batteries to go with the drone?
It's a whole package, yeah.
Yeah. And they bought it already, they've submitted the receipts, we've given the receipts to the state given us the money. This is now just authorizing the payment back to
And
them.
actually, if you look on their either on their webpage or on their Facebook page, you'll see a beautiful shot of City Hall and City Park with the lights on. That they took.
Taken with the drone?
Taken with the drone, yeah. So, I'm a big fan of drone shots. I am a drone pilot, for those of you who don't know. I'm licensed by the
Yeah, right.
FAA to fly drones. So,
All
anyway,
right,
what we need
all
is
right.
the rest, I'd like to,
It's been going over
I don't know if I can
my
call for the motion or not.
It's going over your
No,
house.
so do we have any other questions about the
Motion.
payment?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
Restriction, can't go over the mayor's house.
That's right, yeah. I gotta clean my backyard.
No fly zone.
That's right.
No swimming pools in the summer.
Actually, we are in the Glens Falls Airport Class E airspace, which means that you have to get permission from the FAA before you fly in the city.
Oh, that's great.
There's a lot of helicopters going around right now.
Yeah.
Well, theoretically, all
There's a lot
drones
more
are
helicopters going to the
so
hospital.
you have to register the drone. It's a
Reading
whole
it
Oh, wait,
something funny.
can we finish up here? So we've got loan prospective candidates. Update from Jeff? Oh, that's it.
For the IDA.
Do we have any other business before the commission? I don't believe we have a need to go into executive session. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
And a
Thank you.
motion to adjourn IDA too, so we're not gonna do the
No,
discussion?
we'll just have, I'll pop
Okay.
it, and then I'm guessing you're gonna
Okay.
hang up, I didn't see any message from him.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So moved.
So moved.
second.
All right.
Thank you. We're adjourned from the IDA as well.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm not gonna be here.